This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Middle of the week, middle of the month. It is Wednesday, the 15th day of November, already halfway over. Thanksgiving next week already. Woo. A week from tomorrow, Thanksgiving. Can you believe that? Welcome into the Chris Stigall Show podcast. We're hosting Thanksgiving, and I don't think we have a thing ready. Today, we'll have Congressman Scott Perry. You know, he's the chair of the House Freedom Caucus out of Pennsylvania. He'll give us kind of an honest assessment. If you were with us yesterday, you heard Marjorie Taylor Greene. You heard about this continuing resolution. I suspect some of you in this audience, maybe most of you in this audience, are very disappointed with Mike Johnson and his first move as Speaker of the House in passing this thing. I'll get his honest assessment. He voted against it just like Marjorie Taylor Greene did. So we'll get a read on it. Look, there is a massive, ugly, real battle inside the Republican Party, no doubt about it. We've talked about this. This is not a surprise to you. So we'll get into that. The boys at the Wall Street Journal have figured out that Obama is, in fact, an anti-Semite, a radical, divisive anti-Semite. And when the Wall Street Journal officially confirms it, when the Cologne and Cufflink set does, when Thurston and Lovey Howell get it, then you know it's gotten bad. So that's coming up, and some more news of the day. The Husk out there fumbling around in San Francisco. Sit tight. This is also the time of the year that a lot of people are re-upping for their health insurance or thinking about open enrollment. I don't know if you buy your own health insurance out of pocket. I don't know if you're somebody who's on Medicare already and maybe you buy a supplemental plan every month. My folks do that. Those are expensive. So if you think health insurance is something that's too expensive, I have colleagues. Fast Eddie is now a client and customer of usmedicalplan.com. usmedicalplan.com. John Ruhlman is a great friend. He is somebody that I can physically pick up the phone anytime and say, "Hey, John, what's going on?" I feel comfortable in recommending John and his team to you because I know if you ever have a problem, you'll let me know and I can let him know. Now, that's never happened. All I've ever heard from listeners and friends of this show is, I called John, I'm saving hundreds. I called John, I'm saving $2,000 a month. Literally a friend of mine. That's what he's saving. Guy stopped me at church just Sunday, and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about taking a new job. I don't particularly like the insurance they're offering. I think I'm going to call John." I said, "Please do." So it may be that, he gets insurance for himself, buys a supplemental plan for his wife. There's really anything you want, whether you're a young person and you have no insurance, whether you're a small business owner and you want to more affordably insure your employees, whether you have pre-existing conditions and you're just paying out the nose. Can you do better? John will tell you. Or maybe your employer plan, you think it's pretty good, but, I'm paying like mine. I'll just be straight up honest with you. My insurance plan a month is about $600 a month for my family of 5 through my company plan. And John has assessed those numbers, and he said, listen, for your family of 5 in your situation, you can't beat that. But if I was buying it out of pocket, it would be much more, and John would probably be able to beat that by a lot. So call him, 877-410-4321, 877-410-4321, or usmedicalplan.com. So the big Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco. Yeah, this is where Xi Jinping is coming to visit Gavin Newsom's San Francisco, and they're hosing down all the poop and everything. We talked about this yesterday. First item of business, all the foreign TV crews descend on the city. And first thing, right out of the gate, journalists from the Czech Republic there to cover the big APEC summit, robbed. Naturally, robbed of some of their equipment while recording near the famed City Lights bookstore. Have you been to San Francisco before, Fast Eddie?
I have not, sadly, no.
I went once years ago. It was my very first year in radio. So this is all the way back. Well, first year during a full-time morning show. So this, you got to go all the way back to 2000. This was the year, was this? The reason I'm telling you this story is because Christine and I had never been. We were newly married at the time. This would have been 2001. We had been married 1 year. So we're still in a fairly newlywed situation. And at the time, the radio station that I was doing the morning show for was carrying the Kansas City Chiefs broadcasts. They were the, like WIP carries the Eagles, so this was like the WIP, if you will, of Kansas City. It was a classic rock station. I was doing the morning show there. Miserable existence. But the one cool thing about it was the Chiefs affiliate. So that meant, when you're affiliated with the NFL team in town, you get to travel around with them and do cool stuff and promotions, and everybody else is locked out. That's the only time in this business you get exclusivity, is when the NFL or Major League Baseball is involved. Then the sports just lock everybody out for you. You get run of the roost. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, like if your station is affiliated with an NFL team, ain't nobody else coming near you. You get to do everything. Locker room interviews, tailgating events, travel with the team. There's not another station that can touch you. It's high cotton. That was the only good thing that came out of the entire miserable experience. And so they said to me, Stigall, this was back when the Raiders hadn't moved to Vegas yet. Of course, as Joe Biden said, the Eagles are about to move to Vegas as well. Still can't. Clay Travis was talking about that yesterday. Joe Biden talking to the hockey team, the Stanley Cup winning hockey team out of Vegas. They come to the White House and he says, don't take my Eagles, whatever you do.
Just one promise. Don't get the Philadelphia Eagles to leave and go. Because I'll get divorced if that happens. I married a Philly girl, and it's a long story.
Sounds like a laugh track.
To this day, do you know what that's supposed to mean? Could you even guess what he might have thought, where his feeble old mind went, where it might have even creatively gone? I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I couldn't get there with that one. He's got a hockey team from Vegas with the Stanley Cup, and he's congratulating them, and he says, don't take the Eagles. Can you get there? I mean, even in 6 or 7 steps, can you get there in your mind?
I just think that there's some people, he's not a sports guy, even though he says he played football. I think that there's just some people, it's just like, oh, sports. Yes, I know this. So the Philadelphia Eagles.
Does he think because that's a new team in Vegas that it moved from somewhere else? Or does he think maybe he's thinking that teams move? Because that was my point. The Oakland Raiders, they were the Oakland Raiders back in 2001 when I was working for this station. And they said, that now the Oakland Raiders have moved to Vegas. So do you think he was thinking the Oakland Raiders moved to Vegas, Vegas hockey team? I hope the Eagles don't move. Don't take them to... I'm trying to be generous to the stupid old man.
I think you just translated Biden, Chris. I think that's exactly what. Thank you for that. Now I know.
I thought about it all day, believe it or not. These are the things that consume me. I like to give wandering, absent minds the benefit of the doubt. I figure someday it's either going to be me or my wife rattling around the house, and I'm going to have to learn how to translate one of us. So, before Oakland Raiders moved to Vegas, they were there, and so we flew to San Francisco. The Chiefs were going to play the Oakland Raiders, and they said, as the morning show guy, they said, do you want to come out there, come with a group of listeners? We gave a flight away. We flew the whole group of listeners out there. So we stayed in San Francisco, and then the next day, Oakland Raiders versus Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think I took my new bride to an Oakland Raiders game, Fast Eddie? The hell I did. No, we spent the day walking around the wharf in San Francisco. Then we rented a car and drove up to Napa and saw wine country. That's the only time I've even really actually been in California for any meaningful length of time. We completely abandoned the listeners and the game day and the whole thing and drove to wine country. I wasn't about to go into an Oakland Raiders game dressed in Chiefs gear. Are you kidding me? That would be like walking into the link wearing Cowboys gear. You don't do it.
No, especially that was Raider Nation. That was a rough looking crew in the stands.
That's right. And I know Eagles fans and Philadelphia fans get are painted with a broad brush as a certain type of fan. I've never seen such thuggery and goonery and awful behavior as you saw out of Oakland Raiders fans. Those are some of the worst people I've ever seen in all of sports. I mean, awful people, like bad. So anyway, that's my San Francisco experience, and it was fairly lovely then. I mean, that was just a little over, 20-some years ago, 2001? Loved it. I loved it. It was beautiful. Golden Gate Bridge. I don't think the homeless thing was nearly as rampant. You certainly weren't seeing public toilets on the sidewalk. Well, this is where, they got Xi Jinping coming to visit now. And some 23 years later, since I've been there, they got to bring out the blast hoses and hose down the streets from the human waste and pick up all the garbage and shoo away all the drug addicts and the homeless. But you can't contain the crime. All these major companies are moving out of San Francisco. They're all, like so many major metropolitan cities across the country, large companies are saying, we can't, CVS, Walgreens, Wawa, they're all just saying, we can't do it. We're not going to just be sitting ducks. These people bum rush our store and clean us out. We're out of here. We're leaving. So sure enough, as soon as they bring in the APEC summit, crews from all over the world come to cover it, and they start getting their cameras stolen.
Naturally.
You can't make it up. Can't make it up. I don't know what's going on in the House of Representatives in the United States Senate, but this is remarkable. Did you hear? First of all, I didn't know this. Did you know that one of the senators from Oklahoma is a mixed martial arts guy? Did you even know that?
Nope.
He's a guy called Mark Wayne Mullen. That's his whole name, Mark Wayne. Mark Wayne is one word, one name. Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, a former mixed martial arts fighter, nearly came to blows with the president of the Teamsters in a Senate hearing yesterday. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was the chair. Now, I just love this. I just saw it. I just saw the clip a little while ago. And I wondered what because I'd heard the story, but I hadn't seen the men. I didn't know what they looked like. And I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because they're both very confident in themselves. And you're a guy who's known to scrap. I have always been a guy that I'm a lover, not a fighter. I've done everything in my power to avoid ever being struck or striking. I don't like it. So I didn't even like football. Love watching football, couldn't play it, didn't have it in me to be on the line and go mow over guys. You either have that I'm going to kick your butt instinct or you don't. I don't have it. So what compels somebody to, get into a fighting mood, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
When you decide, all right, this is amped up to a point that now I'm ready to throw fists, is this like Marty McFly, somebody calls you chicken and you just lose all logic? Or are you all the while assessing as it escalates, I think I can kick that guy's butt. I think I can take him. Are you assessing that, or do you just get so stupidly mad? You may get embarrassed, but it doesn't matter now. You're just in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm going to start swinging.
That's how it's been for me. Yeah, it's you get so you don't see straight. You start getting so angry that you're in at that point. You're all the way in.
You're committed. So it's not about whether you can beat him or not. You're just committed to the fight.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know what Mark Wayne Mullen looks like from behind the desk. I don't know. He's sitting up there in one of the Attila Hun chairs, in one of these Senate hearings, so he's behind the desk. And down on the floor testifying is this Teamsters guy. He's a big bald guy because naturally, a big bald guy would be the Teamsters guy. Naturally. Looks like a bit of a gorilla. Who did you like? If you had to place money on those two guys, who did you like in that matchup?
Was it Mark Wayne? Didn't have the size, but he did look fit because he did stand up at one point. And saying he's a mixed martial artist, I like him in this case because he's the one that's mad too.
All right, so here's how it unfolded yesterday in this Senate. By the way, it's the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, chaired by Bernie Sanders. Take a listen.
Like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up. Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution, everybody?
No, sit down.
Oh, Eric,
sit down.
Look at you.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit
Active.
Oh, okay. Sit down, please.
All right, then I respond. Mr.
Hold it. If we can, no, I have the mic. I'm sorry.
This is
hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing.
You're a United States Senator, as though that means anything, by the way. Yeah, the dignity and decorum of being a United States Senator. Yes, let's not all lose ourselves. The respectable, august body of the United States Senate must not be sullied. I don't exactly know what, and I don't care really, but something, this Markwayne Mullen guy, the senator from Oklahoma, something about the testimony from this Teamsters goon has just gotten under his skin. I guess he doesn't, it sounds like he's kind of defending his honor as a self-made businessman. I would guess the Teamsters guy probably was prattling on and popping off about how senators are all rich and, babied and pampered and, don't know the meaning of an honest day's work like a Teamsters guy does. And this Markwayne Mullen probably took offense to that, is kind of the way I read it. I don't know.
and his what do you call him? His staff flagged some tweets for him. So he's like, any place, any time. Okay.
Oh, they've been fighting. They've been fighting on X, formerly Twitter, at one another too. I see. Okay. Yeah, he looks. I mean, those mixed martial arts guys, they're pretty wily. I've seen a few of them in the cage before. They may not even be as big as the Teamsters type guy. They may not have the gorilla size, but they're wily. All of a sudden your head's in between their legs and they crack you like a walnut. I've seen those things. They're bloody. They're messy. I don't know. I kind of wouldn't have minded seeing it. That might have been the most exciting thing to come out of the Senate in a while. Bernie Sanders, the referee.
This is how we should resolve all of our problems in Washington. For charity, I always wanted to challenge Josh Earnest. Remember Obama's old press secretary? Yeah. I always wanted to box him for charity, just charity event. This is how we should do things in Washington.
Can I start volunteering? That might be a great show bit. Can I start offering you, because you have that streak in you where you're scrappy. You like to fist fight. Could I start offering you up in verbal tussles? Hey, if you don't watch yourself, you're going to meet the fury and the fists of Fast Eddie.
It would be good for a brief pause. I'm a little fatter and shorter than I was then. But yeah, I mean, I could. It would take a little bit to knock me down right now, but yeah, moving fast.
Oh, this is the Senate. Calm down. This is it. I kind of would have liked to have seen Bernie Sanders try to restore order if they'd lunged over the desks at each other, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Oh, no.
Oh, I gotta go. You gentlemen lock up. He wouldn't have hung around there too long. Are you kidding me? Meanwhile, over on the House side, the representative from Tennessee, Tim Burchett, accused former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy of elbowing him in the kidneys yesterday. What's going on, Fast Eddie, on Capitol Hill? Burchett talking to a reporter. He was one of 8 Republicans who voted to oust McCarthy, heavily critical of the former speaker. And the alleged altercation indicative of the pressure cooker dynamics in the House GOP right now. Burchett criticized McCarthy for being a bully as he described his altercation with the former House GOP leader, where he says McCarthy elbowed him in the kidneys while he was talking to a reporter in the hallway outside the GOP conference meeting. I got elbowed in the back. And it caught me off guard because it was a clean shot to the kidneys. And I turned around and there was Kevin. And for a minute, I was kind of, what the heck just happened? And then I chased after him, of course. Now, he's the type of guy that when you're a kid, he'd throw a rock over the fence and run home and hide behind mama's skirt.
I could totally see Kevin doing that.
You think California Kevin threw an elbow and then ran and hid?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, listen, I understand there are probably some of you in this audience who have total distaste and disgust for this whole thing. And you say, Stigall, this is no laughing matter. This is disgusting. I got a note from a friend of mine yesterday that said the Democrat Party is imploding. Or excuse me, the Republican Party is imploding. Do you think that's a sign of the Republican Party imploding, this stuff, this behavior? I'll give you a little more. He actually texted me this and sent me very specifically what Nikki Haley had to say yesterday about social media. Now, what did I tell you about Nikki Haley? We've been through this. I pledged after last time's debate, actually heading into the last debate, I said, here's what's going to happen after this debate in Miami with Hugh Hewitt and NBC. Coming out on the other side of it will be the new storyline. Did I not say this, Fast Eddie?
You said she was going to be the belle of the ball.
The belle of the ball, everybody be talking about, oh, the surging Nikki Haley, boy, everybody, we need to take a second look at her. She's, boy, here she comes. Sure enough, do you know that Sean Spicer invited me yesterday onto his show, and he interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy for a while and peppered Vivek with questions about his path to the nomination and if he could get there and what he needed to do in Iowa and blah, 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 blah. And then Sean wanted to bring me in with another one of my colleagues to discuss the interview, which we did, but the interview quickly turned, I don't know when it airs. Maybe it already did. If it hasn't, I'll bring it in and let you listen to it. But the conversation quickly turns to Nikki Haley. Sean is already out there saying, oh, Nikki Haley in Iowa, she's really surging. And I just said, Sean, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. He goes, what? What she is? I go, based on what? Well, the polls, the Iowa polls, but the caucus, you don't know the caucus, the Iowa caucus. I said, I will buy you a steak dinner if Nikki Haley finishes in the top 3 in Iowa. I'll buy you a steak dinner. He says, top 3? I go, well, okay. I had to refine it a little bit because I actually don't think that's impossible, given Trump 1, DeSantis 2, Haley 3. That's probably not unheard of. But I said, if you think, they're talking about her overtaking DeSantis now. They're now saying Haley, first of all, the take yesterday is Trump is not going to do as well as everybody thinks he's going to do in Iowa. These polls are hyperinflated. And number 2, Nikki Haley's going to surprise everybody. And furthermore, that donors are now, that's the scuttlebutt in the room. This is all rumor, but the scuttlebutt is people are getting nervous. They're pulling away from DeSantis. They don't feel like he's getting it done. You know, all the donor class, they don't want Trump, naturally. So they've decided, okay, what do we do? And now the new narrative is, and the media is stoking it, that Nikki Haley is the one. She's the horse to bet on now. Ron DeSantis can't get it done, but Nikki Haley's going to be able to get it done, Fast Eddie.
Aha.
That's what they told. And I said, I will eat my hat if Nikki Haley finishes second in Iowa. They took
Republican
the bet.
primary.
That's right. And yeah. Nikki Haley will take second in Iowa in the Republican primary. I'll eat my hat. Now, I may have to eat crow and eat the hat. I might have to. I might have to buy a steak dinner. But I see no evidence that the Republican base has an appetite for Nikki Haley. And then she surfaces yesterday and says things like this, and you're reminded who Nikki Haley is and why this will never work. All you people cheering for her. Listen.
If you look at social media, the misinformation and the dramatic sides of social media are instigating this. Why? Because it's being pushed by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. It is why when I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family members going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
Okay, so now the one that the media and many Republicans are cheering is the next best choice to DeSantis is out there suggesting, and this will be, by the way, this will be used by DeSantis and Ramaswamy specifically in the next debate. Just go ahead and mark it down now. When's the next one with Megyn Kelly? She'll probably bring it up first.
December 6th? The Wednesday and the first Wednesday in December?
6th, 8th, something like that. Yeah, first Wednesday in December. When that debate happens, Megyn Kelly will probably bring this quote up first, and if she doesn't, I guarantee Vivek and DeSantis will go for her first with this. She just basically said she wants to set up a disinformation bureau, just like Biden and Obama. She just said that anonymous free speech is not free speech. That the government needs to see who you are, everything you post. And we need to be able to see the algorithms of all the social media companies, too. So how is that any different than what we just uncovered with the DOJ colluding with Twitter and Facebook to keep the Hunter Biden story quiet? How is what she said, Fastetti, any different? This is supposedly the hot Republican on the rise in the party now? How's it any different?
Chris, it's not. I didn't know if that was Nikki Haley or Kathy Hochul speaking there, because that's what's happening in New York already. They're like, oh, yeah.
You listen, you Nikki Haley people, put it on your mind. Nikki Haley's not a thing. She never was a thing. Like they said in Clueless, stop try to make fetch happen. It's not a thing. Stop trying to make it a thing. Nikki Haley's not a thing. She's not going to be a thing. Stop trying to make her a thing. I told you they would, though. I spent 20 minutes fighting with two of my colleagues about Nikki Haley yesterday. And then she says this. Oh, I wish she'd said it before the segment. Of course she hadn't. Then we go over to the continuing resolution yesterday. Now, Fast Eddie, this one is... this is the first action that the new Speaker of the House has taken since he was appointed. This is Johnson, Speaker Johnson, Mike Johnson from Louisiana. Yesterday, if you weren't with us, Marjorie Taylor Greene visited the show. And I specifically asked Marjorie Taylor Greene, she'd already indicated she was not going to support the continuing resolution if it came to a vote. And I asked her yesterday, ahead of what ultimately did come to a vote and pass, what she thought would happen. Listen to a little of this.
The Ukraine funding bill to the floor, which was a big no-no, was a red line. And so, you know, I'm very good friends with Matt Gaetz, big supporter of his. We've worked together on many, many issues, especially January 6th and the defendants. But my argument is, if you're going to throw out a speaker for red lines, keep the red line for every speaker. Otherwise, nothing changes.
Yeah, so you would say that Mike Johnson, based on your view of these first actions, is what, no more conservative or less conservative than Kevin McCarthy?
Well, if the actions are the same, how can they be any different? And I think people are going to see and have to judge that for themselves. Again, I like Mike Johnson a lot. He's a good man. He's a Christian. I think his scorecard, he's a 74 on conservative review. I think Kevin McCarthy was a 68. That's not very far apart. Again, I'm a 100. So obviously neither of them are as conservative as I am. And it's impossible. This is the part I can't explain to people enough. This is why I wrote my book, MTG, that I hope people order at mtgbook.com, is what you see on the outside is nothing like it really is on the inside. And having to elect a speaker in what you would really consider a purple conference. We aren't red. Our conference is not red. You have people like me, America First, very conservative, and then you've got people that represent Biden districts, and they're not even, they're barely Republican.
So, Congresswoman, I see that
try to elect a conservative speaker, it's difficult.
I hear that there are 6 of you right now, at least that's the public count, 6 of you that say you won't support a CR, which would lead to, quote, I know shutdown doesn't really mean shutdown, but that's what the media will call it. How do you see this ending up?
From what I hear, the Democrats are very excited to vote for Mike Johnson's clean CR that he'll be bringing to the floor this week.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I'm absolutely a no. I don't care if the government shuts down. The American people have suffered enough. We have a wide open border that is completely ignored. I don't think the federal government deserves funding for the way it's treating the American people. So I don't care if we get a so-called shutdown. Like you said, it doesn't really shut down. Social Security checks keep coming out. Many services continue, especially for veterans. So it's always a lie in the media, like usual.
Okay.
But,
so that's Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday. Her prediction was correct. It came true. We spoke with her yesterday, and then they went to a vote later on in the day, and the House, yes, passed this continuing resolution, a stopgap bill to prevent a government shutdown, reports The Hill, sending the unconventional 2-step continuing resolution to the Senate, marking the first major hurdle for Speaker Mike Johnson. The final vote 336 to 95. There were 127 Republicans, Fast Eddie, that voted for this. 127 voted for it. Only 93 opposed it. Final tally, yeah, all the Democrats threw in, save 2. 336 to 95 was the passage. 336 to 95. So most Democrats and 127 House Republicans voted with the continuing resolution. Marjorie Taylor Greene, not one of them. Daniel Horowitz, our friend at Conservative Review and the Blaze podcast host, says this says it all. The McCarthy agreement with conservatives is null under Johnson. They pass with universal Democrat support. This continuing resolution. What an utter disgrace and what a pathetic, thoughtless strategy last month was, as we warned at the time. So Horowitz says this is no different than what McCarthy would have given us. Why did we even go through this with McCarthy? You agree or disagree with that?
Chris, I don't like it, but I don't know what kind of time. I don't know. Like, I of course don't like them passing this as it is, but I don't know what other options you had.
So take all of this in its totality. CNN is going to have this Burchett guy who says Kevin McCarthy elbowed him in the kidneys. They're going to have him on today. Of course, the MSNBC people are just loving this. Republicans spent day fighting like third graders is their chyron this morning. Nikki Haley just called for a spy bureau on everybody on social media. Ronna McDaniel, by the way, runs the Republican Party. So my friend's text yesterday was, Stigall, the Republican Party is imploding before our eyes. They're an excrement show. I don't know. How do you... It's not pretty. It's not pretty. I mean, listen, I guess if I'm going to try to put a silver lining on this, I've continued to say I don't mind a spirited fight for the direction. You know, if there's a silver lining, it's that the Democrat Party, they're a flock of birds. We've talked about this. They all move together. They all vote together. They all think alike. Not a single one of them steps out of line. You don't hear dissension from them. I mean, even when these 4 or 5 women step forward and they become the most vicious anti-Semites you've ever heard speak, do the Democrats have to answer for it? Does the media ask the Democrats to explain them? No. They just get to spout and yell and say whatever crazy, racist things they want. Democrat Party doesn't own them. They don't have to explain themselves. Nobody says the Democrat Party is descending into racism and bigotry, and they are, of course. Of course they are. But you never heard that said. So look, the Republican Party is fighting for its identity right now, Fast Eddie, and that's ugly. Nobody wants to see this sausage being made out in public. I get it. This is an identity fight. And that's all I can say about it. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a 3-dimensional X-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past had referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. You know, and then... Inflation is still out there. It was flat. It didn't go up, but it didn't go down. Inflation is still flat, and the consumer price index, the cost of things, up. We told you Home Depot came out with numbers yesterday. You probably didn't hear it anywhere else but here. Home Depot said cost of goods gone up 3%. Everything's getting, retail costs are getting more expensive, even if inflation was flat. And then one more from the culture stack, because this is, while I realize that I laid out all the reasons that the Republicans are in disarray, never forget who the Democrats are. They're anti-Semites. They don't believe in a border. They want to destroy our currency and our dollar by inflating it. They want everything more expensive. And on top of that, they're radicals when it comes to the culture. 1,000-sign petition against Macy's non-binary trans extravaganza planned for Thanksgiving Day parade. Yeah, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade that you and I probably have turned on since we were kids. I think I've told you that was always my mother's signal. It was time to decorate for Christmas. We turned that on when I was a little kid. I always remember when Santa came at the end of the parade, that was when it was time to get out the Christmas decorations. That was what it was for me growing up. Over 20,000 petitioners have signed an online campaign taking aim at the iconic Thanksgiving Day parade. Amid allegations, this year's celebration will put on a, quote, non-binary and transgender extravaganza. Brought to you by Macy's. 1 million moms put together this petition. Macy's inclusion of a non-binary transgender character in a parade is just another example of an ideological war that's being waged on families. Customers are saying they've had enough. It seems corporate brands we once trusted still just aren't getting the message. I don't know that Macy's has confirmed this or not, but it would not surprise me, would it you? That you're sitting there watching the Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning parade, and out dances a trans non-binary figure for the non-binary trans extravaganza. Would that shock you to see that in your living room on Thanksgiving morning, Fast Eddie?
Well, that would shock me, yes, but no, it wouldn't shock me that if Macy's knew or planned about it. The only thing is, I do want to be careful though, because remember they hosted a drag show at Music Fest earlier this year. And like Yingling sponsored the venue, like long-standing sponsored the venue that it was in.
That's right.
And then people started coming after Yingling. No. So I don't know. We have to be
like
careful.
If there's something going on down the street in a theater at the same time the parade's going on, and they're trying to lump it into the parade versus actually marching down the street in the parade. That's different. Is your point?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Duly noted. We'll watch and see. Would it surprise you though, seriously, in the least, if they pushed trans crap in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade? It would not surprise me in the least to see it. I'd hate to see it, but it wouldn't surprise me. Meanwhile, Disney World rolling out pronoun pins for their employees. Employees at the Epcot theme park at Walt Disney World can now fill out a form with their preferred pronouns, have them added to their name pin by scanning a QR code with their pictures. The initiative is still voluntary, according to the employees. Hi, everyone. We're excited to announce and introduce pronoun name tags. Pronoun name tags help us understand each other more and bring a positive impact within our community. The initiative is first being rolled out for the custodial department before it moves to every department of the park. So you'll know, if you attend Disney World in the near future, what the people who clean the theme park's pronouns are. Just in case, as you're walking through Epcot and you see a guy sweeping or emptying the trash, you will be able to comfortably know how to address him or her by the pronouns indicated on his or her name tag. Don't you feel better? So these are the things, folks. I mean, from the economy to the border to the culture to the bigotry, the attack on our schools. The Democrat Party is a party of debauchery, lawlessness, chaos, and destruction. Of course, media would rather be talking about Kevin McCarthy elbowing a guy in the kidneys, or a mixed martial arts guy threatening to come across the table in a Senate hearing, or Mike Johnson and Marjorie Taylor Greene fighting over continuing resolution. Of course they'd rather talk about it. And it is a problem. I'm not dismissing it, but don't ever misunderstand that what I believe is a healthy fight for the direction of the Republican Party still pales in comparison to the destruction and the madness that we're watching coming out of the ruling class called the Democrat Party. And I'm not going to forget that or get distracted by it. We can walk and chew gum here, but I do understand that most of this news today is made for the consumption of people that are easily distracted from the destruction. It's easier to laugh and talk about the Republicans having maybe even physical fights than to talk about the decay of the country. Of course it's easier. Of course they'd rather talk about it. And I guess there's an argument that could be made. Republicans have got to be careful. They should do this behind closed doors. They shouldn't give them fodder. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you want? How do you take hundreds and hundreds of individually minded people from all over the country, and certainly more conservative parts of the country versus more squish parts of the country? How do you take all these people, put them together, and there's a real fight back in their respective districts and states? There's a lot of pressure being put on them. They're fighting. Isn't that a natural outgrowth of a party that's trying to find its direction? Donald Trump, who a lot of people want to lock away in prison forever, is still, by all metrics, still the leading Republican candidate, and a lot of this party doesn't want him anymore. A lot of this party is trying to push Nikki Haley. Still others say, no, Ron DeSantis is the guy. While it seems the majority of people still believe the guy they want to put in prison is the guy we want to nominate. Yeah, it's a mess. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's messy. But it's necessary, and it will come to an end. It's a shame. It's a shame it's happening at the same time Democrats are destroying the country. There's really no ideal time for the Republican Party to fracture and have an identity fight. It's never a good time. It just happens to be coinciding with the destruction of the country by the Democrats. They're already thinking about the Christmas shopping season at gulagamerica.com. Have you been to their website yet? I'm so proud to call these folks new sponsors to the show. They are founding harumphers. They've been longtime sponsors. I see them from time to time posting on social media. They want to invite you to come into their store, gulagamerica.com, a great stop for patriots and conservatives this holiday season. Gulagamerica.com. Now extending an offer to you if you're a listener of this show. They're going to give you 20% off your entire order between now and Christmas. They're kicking off the Christmas season early. Between now and Christmas, you'll save 20% on all your shopping if you use my promo code Chris20. So it's Chris20, Chris20, and that'll give you 20% off at gulagamerica.com once again. So it's long and short sleeve, graphic T-shirts and hoodies and, gosh, a whole lot more. Funny stuff too. An original Canon. They have an F-15 shirt. You know, the Husk says, "Yeah, you're gonna need an F-15 if you're gonna take me." Well, they have that shirt. Or my pronouns. I was just reading this. They have my pronouns are 9mm, 45 ACP, and 50 cal. Or my pronouns are Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. It's fantastic. They're funny. They've got a great sense of humor, a great edge, and now a great deal. 20% off. All this hilarious, patriotic-themed wear, witty, irreverent stuff. GulagAmerica.com. Go to their website today. Do a little shopping. I hope you will, and take advantage of that 20% off with Chris20 as your promo code. As they say, Gulag America is not our wish, but it is our warning. Check them out. Merry Christmas early from GulagAmerica.com. Throwing Congressman Scott Perry a curveball this morning, right out of the gate. Glad to have you here, my friend. He's the leader of the Freedom Caucus, one of our favorite guests, one of our most trustworthy voices in the United States House of Representatives. Congressman, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm ready for the curveball. Let's get it.
Nikki Haley. I bet you never thought I'd even ask you about her. Said this yesterday about social media, and I wanted to get your reaction. Play it, Fast Eddie.
If you look at social media, the misinformation and the dramatic sides of social media are instigating this. Why? Because it's being pushed by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. It is why when I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, all of a sudden people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family member is going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to help our country.
Congressman, that is the presidential candidate, Nikki Haley. Your reaction?
Right. Well, first of all, misinformation and disinformation, those are buzzwords used by the left, and they're usually used against the right, and they enshrine them in legislation and policy in Washington, D.C. That having been said, I would have some concern I like the fact that that anonymity would be gone. I don't have any anonymity, but I'm a public figure. But a lot of people enjoy their privacy and want privacy. I would have concerns about, we don't like it when the left-wing government uses social media and these platforms to drive the narrative, their narrative. But I don't see it as a whole lot different or a whole lot better when someone else does it, and even when we're doing it. I mean, the point is that these are private businesses and we're private citizens, and a government that's involved very closely in our lives that way is problematic. That all having been said, I do think that there is some room on social media for accountability, and I do think that potentially the only one that will do that, at least initially, is the government. But it'd be much better if the market would drive that, and that's what we, I think, would strive for, is the market driving that.
Yeah,
and get better outcomes and less government involvement in our lives.
As far as I'm concerned, you just passed the test with flying colors with that answer, because if we know one thing, if anybody understands an overzealous government, it is a guy who's had his phone snatched so they can look through it, Congressman.
Right. That's exactly right. All based on the fact that, I won't keep my mouth shut, and I'm saying things that the government, that the current government doesn't like. But it's no better when the next government doesn't like what the other guy's saying. And look, I don't know. I'm not a fan of Eric Adams. I think he's generally incompetent and completely a leftist and destroying New York City and his portion of America to the extent that he can. But I also think that he might be being persecuted by this federal government because he's taken Joe Biden on and being critical of the lack of an immigration policy that secures America. And they might just be smacking him down and showing all the other people, hey, you just keep your mouth shut, or else we're coming and we're going to make your life miserable. We're not supposed to live in fear of our government. And I don't like it when either side or any side does it.
Wow, that's quite a statement, Congressman Perry. I don't disagree. I actually surmised the same thing. I'm glad to hear you say that. That's how I read it. I don't think Eric Adams' politics are helpful in any way, but that is kind of my read. And I kind of wonder that too with Bob Menendez to a degree. I mean, I think Menendez is dirty, but it seems that the Obama administration, which we're currently still living through, has a particular distaste for Bob Menendez. Would you think that's about accurate?
Well, I just feel like with his long track record, they've been watching him forever. They've known everything he's done, and they waited for an opportune time when it suited their interest. And generally speaking, the interest was to turn the heat down on the Biden family and interest in what the House of Representatives was digging up and putting out on the Bidens. I think they wanted to turn the heat down and distract. And so Bob Menendez always can be counted on to be doing something nefarious and questionable. And they just, they know it. It's just when they bring it out, they're probably involved in it.
Marjorie Taylor Greene visited the show yesterday, Congressman, and I asked her about what was at the time a CR that had not been voted upon yet. I asked her if she'd support it. She said no. She'd already made that clear. She was pretty confident all Democrats would. At the time, you were one of the names that had popped up as a no as well, as one of the early, 8, I think, original people that said, no, I wouldn't support a CR. So it did, in fact, pass with, I don't know how many Republicans, most Republicans, and all Democrats. This has now led, there's a schism here this morning, I will just tell you. People are asking, how is Mike Johnson, the current speaker, any different than Kevin McCarthy? And if, in fact, this is where we wound up, then why did we go through this speaker fight to begin with? So what say you?
Reasonable questions. I think Mike Johnson is a conservative in his soul, but I also think he was thrown into the game, in overtime at the end of the overtime period, down 3 scores, and most of the crowd had already left the stadium, and we expected him to win. That having been said, I think we offered him a plan to win. But I think that also there are members of our conference that are so afraid of a shutdown that they may not have provided him the votes to do that. Now, I think he actually could have gotten the votes just by his will and his effort going and talking to some of those members in what we call marginal districts, but he chose not to. And he says we're going to fight in January. I will tell you, I don't see it. and I sure hope he's right. So I'm going to give him some grace on that. So I'm not going to blow him up. I voted no. I think it was a bad move. I don't think it's a victory for the American people or the Republican conference. He had a choice to unite Republicans and divide the Democrats and the House and the Senate over this thing. But he chose the other path generally because Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer teamed up against him. Unfortunately for us as Republicans, we have members of our team working against us, and that makes it a challenge for any single one of us. But sooner or later, we're going to have to, as Republicans, be willing to offend the Republicans who are operating on behalf of the swamp instead of their constituency. And I do count the leader of the Senate in that camp, and go fight over that. I don't see us being willing to do that in January. The Speaker says that's when it's going to happen. I sure hope so. I'm going to be up for it, but I will tell you, a lot of folks are not going to be up for it because in January, we're going to be headed very close to primaries across the country, and people just don't want that kind of turmoil during the primaries. But all we did is move the timetable 2 months to the right. And so what didn't happen in December is now going to happen in January and February. And, what we're used to getting is this pre-Christmas omnibus. Now we just might get a post-Christmas omnibus. Both are unacceptable. We're going to have to be willing to throw down at some point, and I don't know when that point is, but I could not and would not support this. You characterized it correctly. I think barely the majority of Republicans voted for this. The complete majority of Democrats, only 2 Democrats voted against it, which should signal to you who it was better for. Regardless of what they said, this gives them just continues the Pelosi, Biden, Schumer policies of the last term, and it continues it for another 2 months. And that's not what people elected Republicans to do.
Well, that lunatic Jayapal, the congresswoman who's kind of a pseudo squad member in praising Hamas, she said that this was a big win for them yesterday. That's what, that was her quote.
Well, that's exactly right. That tells you everything you need to know. I know that the media is characterizing it otherwise as a win for Speaker Johnson, and it might be a win for Speaker Johnson that he avoided some of this turmoil for the near term, but it is not a win for the American people.
So, Congressman Scott Perry, chair of the House Freedom Caucus, what are we to infer then from this? That Johnson is not a real fighter and not a principled conservative? I don't know the man. You do. So, what are we to gather from this?
I think it's too early to tell. Again, he has to deal with 50 years of rot and the 10 months of rot that happened right before him and the setup for failure that happened right before we threw him in the game. Now, that excuse is going to go about another 15 minutes, and then it's not going to be useful. So he's going to have to set the table for success in January and February and throw down over these things and be committed to fighting for them and beating the Senate. That's really who we have to beat, is the Senate. And if he does not do that, then I think he's going to be on the road to wearing out his welcome very quickly, unfortunately. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, where do you think things like funding for Ukraine wind up? Will that be separately debated? Will Johnson parse these things out so that we can have a clear, transparent debate on each issue?
Yeah, there's no doubt that he wants to do that. As you might have realized, our friends in the Senate forced even Mitch McConnell, because he didn't want to do this either, but they forced them to vote on what the House sent over regarding Israel, which is the first time ever that it was paid for. And that's why the Senate didn't want to take it up. But our friends over there forced them on the day that the march and the rally for Israel was in Washington, D.C. Every single Democrat voted against it, voted against supporting Israel. So Speaker Johnson, I think, is committed to it. They desperately want Ukraine, the military-industrial complex, and the establishment here in Washington, D.C. want all this Ukraine funding, and I think it can be leveraged. The question is how much are we willing to fight on for it, and what are we willing to pay anything to Ukraine for to get something? I would say it's morally kind of bankrupt to equate our border to the Ukrainian border, but that might be the eventual realistic approach to this thing, because the Senate and this town so desperately wants all that money if we can force them to actually secure the border. And let's be clear, that's not just going to be legislation, because the Biden administration doesn't follow the law now. It would have to be linked to something similar to, you show us the numbers in the first 3 months that get down below, what were the incursions on the border when President Trump was the president, and then we'll give you the first tranche of X billion dollars for Ukraine or whatever. But it's going to have to be performance-based. I don't think the White House or the Democrats are going to go for that, but that's where we have to, I think, draw the line if we're going to have any chance of A, winning, and B, securing our border realistically. That's how it's going to have to be done. But it'd be a heavy lift.
Yeah, speaking of the border, Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene, also, we discussed yesterday with her, introduced these articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas. And again, some of your colleagues actually stood with him and prevented him from being impeached. Can you, I know this is a dangerous question, and you probably are loath to get into it, but what could explain people like Darrell Issa and the others standing with Mayorkas, or at a bare minimum, not supporting impeaching him like the rest of you did?
Yeah, I think that what I've heard, and I don't see it as functional, but that we're not ready, and we haven't made the case for impeachment proceedings, and so the vote was ill-timed. The House has had 10 months of watching. In the majority of watching Mayorkas destroy our country and flout the laws. But let's face it, we've had the whole time of the Biden presidency to watch that. So the proof is right there. And I don't care if the House is ready or not. The House needs to get ready because our country is being burned to the ground. So I just see those as inadequate responses. We should have had that. It shouldn't have taken Marjorie's privileged motion to impeach Mayorkas to get to the floor. This should be a major. This should be a major focus for the Republican Party and the Republican Conference. Quite honestly, it should be bipartisan and nonpartisan. Our country is being destroyed by a wide open border where people on the terror watch list are in our country and we have no idea where they are. I don't know what the higher calling for members of Congress is, and if it takes impeachment, maybe inartfully or maybe poorly timed, but that's so be it. That's what it takes. We must do it.
Strategically speaking, if the House had not passed this continuing resolution, and let's just say Johnson said, unless we get meaningful cuts, we're not doing this, and we will, quote, shut down as of Friday. Do you think, just as a political matter, do you think that the Republicans over a series of weeks and months could make a credible case that Democrats are being unreasonable in not reducing spending? Do you think that that's a winning case for Republicans if you just hold out and keep pushing on this issue, or not?
I don't know if it is a winning case. It certainly is with me, but let's face it. The American people have heard, $34 trillion in debt and we're going insolvent, Social Security's going bankrupt, Medicare's going bankrupt. All these things are true. They're true. We're going to pay next year $1 trillion in interest, and we're going to be over $34 trillion in debt next month. The American people's eyes glaze over because from their standpoint, it's a bunch of rhetoric in Washington, D.C. They don't see, and we have failed to make the case over time of how it affects their lives. Now, it's affecting their lives right now because everything you buy from lettuce to lumber is much more expensive and unaffordable. But still, we don't have the media, generally speaking. We got Chris here, but we have to make the case every day that our rampant spending in Washington, D.C. makes your life unaffordable at home. And we're just kind of coming to that in the last couple years of that steady drumbeat of that message. And I think it's starting to break through with the American people, but we have a long way to go. People just don't connect the fact that Washington's spending is destroying their life and their ability to afford just the normal things in life. And so I think we haven't really prepared to make that case, and America will see it as generally kind of more just infighting between Republicans and Democrats as opposed to what it really is trying to, Chris, there are plenty of big spending Republicans, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of those, or this wouldn't have happened. So in some respects, we have to fight against our own to drive this message home.
You're a leading voice in the Republican caucus. You're a leading voice in Republican politics. You also happen to come from Pennsylvania. And as we've seen in another election cycle, the Republican Party, run by Ronna McDaniel, does not seem yet, and Pennsylvania's Republican Party does not seem yet to understand Democrats' ground game in gathering votes and collecting ballots well ahead of Election Day. I know you understand that. I wonder, what, in your view, politically, are the Republicans not doing, or what do we need to better understand, or do we need a new party chair? Because when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of Democrat ballots flooding the system before Republicans even wake up and get dressed to go vote, how are we going to overcome that, Congressman?
Well, we're going to have to just accept, even though we don't like it and we're responsible for it. I must say that, unfortunately, the new paradigm that has been set for us. And so where we're normally used to spending whatever money we raise to try and influence and educate voters by telling us what we did or what we would do if you elect us versus what the other side will do, the other side doesn't even bother with that anymore. They use their resources to go, as you said, get those ballots and get them in. And the Republican Party just has to accept and acknowledge that the battlefield has changed. We need to change our tactics. And it's not about getting the same people that would normally vote on Election Day to vote by mail. That doesn't increase your odds. It's getting the people that wouldn't vote on Election Day because, their wife got sick or they were late for work or they were out of town. It's getting people that are inclined to vote but just don't vote on Election Day or don't vote, period, to go get them to vote. They will vote for us if we go help them find the way, the systems that are now in place, this early voting, this mail-in voting, to go do that. Republicans are generally loath to do that. We like to show up on Election Day, but let's face it, if something comes up, the kids' soccer game, well, I couldn't make it, but I'm sure it'll be okay. That's what happens. The Democrats don't take that chance anymore, and they set the system up where they don't have to. And so they use that to go find the marginal voters that may vote and may not, and they make sure they do vote. And Republicans just have to acknowledge that while this system is in place and we don't like the rules of this game, these are now the rules. So if we're going to win, we're going to have to play by those rules and get better at beating the Democrats at it. Because we don't like these rules, the way to change them, because as you know, we have a feckless legislature. I hate to say that in Harrisburg, but the only way to beat them or to change these rules is to beat the Democrats at it, and then they will be the ones that are clamoring to change it back to, well, we should vote in person with your ID on Election Day. But the only way that's going to happen is when we start winning using their rules.
Do you have much of a relationship with the GOP chairman or Ronna McDaniel, the national RNC chair? Do you have much of a relationship with those people?
I have a very marginal relationship at the national level, have a closer one at the state level. They're wonderful people.
Do they get what you just said? Do you think they understand what you just said?
I think they understand it, but I would say this: I go for results. I'm a results-oriented person, and it doesn't matter whether I like you or not. I can like you and still disagree with you. We have to have results, and so while I appreciate our relationship, if you're not getting the job done, we need to find somebody that can and will.
And then finally, I'll let you go on this question. In a fight between Tim Burchett of Tennessee and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who do you put your money on?
Well, I definitely put my money on Burchett, but look, anybody can get the upper hand in the sucker punch situation. So,
That's it. For people that don't know, again, the story is allegedly Kevin McCarthy elbows him in the kidney while he's doing a television interview. Do you think that really happened?
Well, apparently, I'm not going to question the veracity of Mr. Burchett, but that's what's been reported, and it wasn't even reported initially by him. He didn't say much about it. It was the reporter that he was talking to that witnessed it who broke the story. So I think Burchett would be fine to just kind of live his life and represent his district. But once it was out in the open, he had to verify whether it occurred or not. And it sounds like it did happen that way.
And the International Brotherhood of Teamsters General President Sean O'Brien versus Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullen. Who do you like in that matchup?
Not even a contest. This Teamsters president takes the huge beatdown. Now, the question is, they're always surrounded by a bunch of other leadership, union thugs, and I don't know if Mark Wayne can take on like a dozen of them at one time. But that might be something pretty entertaining to watch.
Cage matches. What the hell? Why not?
Right.
What else do we have going on? Congressman, what an amazing time to be alive. Grateful for your perspective. Gosh, we'll stay in touch. I hope in January Speaker Johnson makes good on this and gets tough. I guess we'll give him the holidays and hope for the best. All right, my friend. Thank you. Well, look, he doesn't take any delight in it, but I have a feeling that somewhere in the corner of Mike's mind, he's a good man who would never say this aloud, but Mike Lindell at MyPillow might feel just a smidge of schadenfreude at the news that Bed Bath & Beyond has gone bankrupt. Yeah, the company that first threw Mike's pillows and products out of their store has now filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, I can tell you at MyPillow.com, they're anything but bankrupt. They are fantastic. They are high quality. They are doing well by their customers, and they don't need a retailer like Kohl's or Bed Bath & Beyond. Yes, they sold their products and sold them well until politics got in the way, so Mike just took it all online, and MyPillow.com is roaring. He also sells at his store the My Coffee, which I drink now and love, and I hope you'll go online and order all of it. And I hope you'll use my name, Chris Podcast, when you do it. If you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code when you go to MyPillow.com, Chris Podcast, you'll get up to 80% on a lot on that website. You'll get discounts regardless, but particularly some of the clearance stuff, you'll save ridiculous money. So please use the promo code Chris Podcast when you order, and I do hope you do. We have an entire bed outfitted with MyPillow stuff now. We've got the sheets, we've got the blanket, we've got the pillows. Even Dean has his own MyPillow dog bed. Like I said, I drink the MyPillow, or it's not MyPillow coffee. It's called My Coffee. I keep screwing that up. That would be weird if it was pillow coffee. No, it's coffee, which I sip sometimes while leaning against MyPillow. The MyPillow 2.0, the mattress topper, which is like a brand new mattress without paying for a brand new mattress. You know, he'll ship that mattress topper to you for free if you use my promo code, Chris Podcast, right now. It's covered in that new 2.0 fabric. So are his pillows that keep you cool all night long. He'll send you a second MyPillow 2.0 if you use my promo code, Chris Podcast. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, it's true. He's made me a believer. Dean, my dog, as well. The slippers, the towels, the bed sheets, the pajamas, and so much more. And yes, even the coffee. Go to MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Chris Podcast and save, or call today 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Who needs Bed Bath & Beyond anyway? MyPillow.com, promo code Chris Podcast. The Husk giving a climate speech yesterday. I don't know. I guess these are always good for some chuckles. What the hell? Let's listen to the Husk fumble his way through a speech. He's not doing it. Have you noticed this? He doesn't really speak much anymore at all. He doesn't take many questions, and have you noticed he doesn't really give many speeches, period, anymore? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I haven't been yelled at in a little while now.
Well, let's see what happened yesterday. Just some excerpts.
Last year alone, natural disasters in America caused $178 billion in damages. They hit everyone, no matter what their circumstances. Yeah. But they hit the most vulnerable the hardest. Seniors, people with disabilities, people experiencing homelessness who have nowhere to turn.
Right.
Black, brown, and tribal communities, territories that are most exposed and have the least fewest resources. And folks,
this is so stupid.
None of this is inevitable.
Yeah.
None of it's inevitable. From day one, my administration has taken unprecedented climate action.
Yeah.
We're working with everyone from mayors to county officials to entrepreneurs to academics, business leaders, labor leaders, tribal leaders. We're focused in all parts of America, cities, suburbs, small towns, and rural communities and tribal nations. And here's how.
He's only excited
We're
when
using
he's
a
yelling
law
at
I
us.
got passed when I first came to office called the American Rescue Plan.
I can't. That's enough. Extreme weather is only targeting everyone who's not white. So rich whites, if you have experienced extreme weather, it's only because you are not rich or white. So no white people of means have experienced extreme weather, is effectively the takeaway from that. All right. He is asked about his meeting with Communist Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Take a listen.
Sir, part of your meeting with Xi tomorrow, sir? And how would you define success with your meeting with President Xi?
To get back on a normal course of corresponding, being able to pick up a phone and talk to one another if there's a crisis, being able to make sure our military still have contact with one another. We can't take, as I told you, we're not trying to decouple from China. But what we're trying to do is change the relationship for the better. From my perspective, if in fact the Chinese people who are in trouble right now economically, if the average if the average citizen in China was able to have a decent paying job, that benefits them and it benefits all of us. But I'm not going to continue to sustain the support for positions where if we want to invest in China, we have to turn over all our trade secrets. Thank you.
Okay, so that's enough. So he's willing to talk tough about how the Chinese people's situation needs to become better. But he can't say that when it comes to the Palestinian people under Hamas, for instance. Isn't that interesting? Like, he's not afraid to say the Chinese people are oppressed is effectively what he's saying, which is true. But yet he's bagged how many millions of dollars from Chinese affiliates and associates? Again, the Chinese spy balloon, which I brought up again yesterday during the Sean Spicer appearance. I can't believe we don't talk about that anymore. Again, the actions do not meet up with the words. He talks like a tough guy. He hopes he can pick up the phone again and talk with Xi, but he's not going to do it until this improves and that improves. But he keeps cashing the checks. We keep doing business. Then he's asked, now he finally gets pissed off because he knows this is the worst of it all. Among these hostages held in Gaza right now are Americans, right? It's not just Israeli hostages that are being held. American hostages are being held too. He's asked about that.
Can you address the hostages directly and give them a message of hope and resilience in these troubling times?
Yes, I can. I've been talking with the people involved every single day. I believe it's going to happen, but I don't want to get into detail.
Can you address the hostages directly and give them a message of hope? Yes, I can. I've been talking with the people involved every single day. Sure you have. Over at the Wall Street Journal, we've written about this. Or I should say, I've talked about what the Wall Street Journal has written about here today pretty extensively. In fact, I also wrote about Obama's. It's Obama's legacy. It's Obama's anti-Semitic heritage that lends itself to the inexplicable policy we're seeing today carried out by the, air quote, Biden administration. And I'm so glad to see places like the Wall Street Journal are starting to finally pick up on this. This would have been kooky or conspiratorial or unthinkable to even say some time ago. But now that the Wall Street Journal is saying it, you can believe it. I'm glad this is starting to permeate the cologne and cufflink set. Obama's lesson for Rashida Tlaib. Poor Rashida Tlaib, writes Bill McGurn. If only she had Barack Obama's ability to couch the argument for moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas in terms acceptable to polite society. But she doesn't. Ms. Tlaib remains unapologetic. In her statement, she said to her colleagues, many of them have shown me that Palestinian lives simply do not matter to them, but I still do not police their rhetoric or actions. This from a congresswoman who posted a video on social media accusing Joe Biden of supporting, quote, the genocide of the Palestinian people. But then there's the Obama approach. This is important to understand. The Obama approach. At the same time Ms. Tlaib was drawing condemnation even from Democrats, Obama goes on a podcast, and that clip is released. We played it here, in which Mr. Obama also made the case for moral equivalence, but he did it differently than Rashida Tlaib, didn't he? With the halting, the thoughtful, professorial delivery. Remember this? Listen.
If there's any chance of us being able to act constructively to do something, it will require an admission of complexity and maintaining what on the surface may seem contradictory ideas. That what Hamas did was horrific, and there's no justification for it. And what is also true is that the occupation and what's happening to Palestinians is unbearable. And what is also true is that there is a history of the Jewish people that may be dismissed unless your grandparents or your great-grandparents or your uncle or your aunt tell you stories about the madness of anti-Semitism. And what is true is that there are people right now who are dying who have nothing to do with what Hamas did. And what is true, right? I mean, we can go on for a while. And the problem with the social media and trying to TikTok activism and trying to debate this on that is you can't speak the truth. You can pretend to speak the truth. You can speak one side of the truth. And in some cases, you can try to maintain your moral innocence, but that won't solve the problem. And so if you want to solve the problem, then you have to take in the whole truth. And you then have to admit nobody's hands are clean, that all of us are complicit to some degree. I look at this and I think back, what could I have done during my presidency to move this forward as hard as I tried? I've got the scars to prove it. But there's a part of me that's still saying, well, was there something else I could have done?
Yep.
That's the conversation we should be having.
All right, so back to the Bill McGurn piece in the Wall Street Journal. Unlike other former presidents who returned home after their time in the White House was over, Obama never left Washington. Unlike Mr. Biden, Obama influences hearts and minds. While he would never use any language as incendiary as Rashida Tlaib's, for instance, and doesn't believe the extreme claims she makes, which I disagree with McGurn there. Again, he's writing for the Wall Street Journal, so you have to understand they're always trying to be the smartest and most sophisticated. I don't believe Mr. Obama is as hateful as... Oh, I do. Yes, he is, Bill. Bill, he is every bit as hateful. He hates Jews as much as Rashida Tlaib. He just says it prettier, which is the point of his column, so I get back. Mr. Obama is more corrosive because what he says gets repeated in America's genteel quarters, writes McGurn. It's exactly right. So while Ms. Tlaib's censure was welcome, it was easy. But her influence is limited because she's recognized by the American public as a left-wing kook. Mr. Obama, however, would never be so crude as to invoke the river to the sea language or actually come out and say that Israel is as evil as Hamas. But notwithstanding his more moderate views, which again aren't moderate, folks, listen to me, and this is where Bill McGurn frustrates me a bit. His speech is moderate, his views aren't. And that actually is what McGurn is saying, but he won't quite go there. Because nobody wants to believe that Barack Obama is as wild and left-wing and wacko as Rashida Tlaib. Nobody wants to tell themselves. No one can allow themselves to believe this country elected someone as radical as Rashida Tlaib. Bill McGurn can't come to grips with that. I can, you can, we did, we understood this. His preacher said it. America's chickens are coming home to roost. We all understand that Barack Obama is the most radically divisive president we've ever seen. We all understand that. McGurn just can't quite... It's a little too far for the cologne and cufflink set. So anyway, he goes on to say, the former president's call for complexity and his declaration that the whole truth means we are all complicit in the bloodshed serves the same purpose. It clouds fundamental moral distinctions. So when Rashida Tlaib makes the case for moral equivalence, she's outrageous and extreme. But when Obama does it, his argument is smooth and sophisticated. And as McGurn does correctly summarize, that's what makes it all the more pernicious. That is why Barack Obama has always been more dangerous. He always has that smooth, halting, professorial delivery. that makes people say, well, now that guy sounds smart. He's not the screeching loon that gets pulled out of a building by security. You know, tomorrow we're going to talk with a guy called Scott McKay, who authored a book called Racism, Revenge, and Ruin. It's all Obama, and this is the thrust of his book, and we're going to get into that tomorrow. But that's, I'm glad to see the boys at the Wall Street Journal finally see it our way.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.